Welcome back, everybody. This is your Captain Mog speaking here, and we are playing some more Kerbal Space Program today. I know it's been a little while since our last episode, but with the newest 1.0 release and Kerbal Space Program going into fully released mode, I guess you might say, it's finally been released from early access, and now it's a quote-unquote complete game. I'm sure they're still going to be adding a lot, but they've added a lot already, including one of the most asked for features for a very long time, female Kerbals. They finally made it to the game. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to pick one up for our roster yet due to the incredibly, I'll say, rich roster that we already have. We've got a lot of Kerbals on our Kerbonauts already, so to hire more, we basically need to spend a lot of money for me to get any extras, or I need to fire a bunch of people so I can afford a new one. But we're going to be trying out a new space plane today that I've been putting a little work into. I know that the new update added a bunch of stuff, and it changed a bunch of stuff with the aerodynamics and how the flight models are worked, so I figured, hey, what the hell, let's go ahead and make try to make a space plane. But for now, we're basically just building a plane and loading up our crew. I want to get this shuttle basically good to go and kind of figured out so that when I go to upgrade it, because we're going to be putting some more rockets on it sooner or later, I'm sure, to try to make it into an actual space plane and get it up in orbit. This guy will need to be tested and basically just go through a lot of iterations to get to that point. For now, we're just checking basically how it handles in the air, how its lift works, how it controls, make sure we can land it, make sure it doesn't wig out of control. I've got the lift and the center of mass pretty well aligned at this point on this design, so hopefully it'll do the trick, and it's hecka fast. This thing will take off well before the end of the ramp, in fact very shortly here. And there it goes. Even before we really clear all the buildings at the space center here, we are off the runway and able to pull up our landing gear. Now, we made it nice and easy. We just turned on our SAS, and basically due to the ship already kind of being at a slight upward facing angle, due to its resting on its wheels at that angle, we can basically just throttle up, put it on SAS, and it'll lift off on its own because of the angle. It's really nice and handy, but we're pitching this thing up to about the 40-ish, 45 degree. We're going to try and get it up into the atmosphere and see how it handles up at higher speeds and higher altitudes with a thinner atmosphere. Cruising on up, you can see the wake of our trails here coming off. We're basically going through the atmosphere way too fast at this point, and getting some contrails, or whatever the hell they're actually called, some atmospheric effects. We haven't hit red yet, so thankfully we're not burning anything, but we're definitely increasing our heat by cruising at this speed, at this thick of an atmosphere. There we go, we cooled it down a little bit, went up a little higher where it's a little thinner. We are up at about the 10K mark now, and going to be trying to level out and see how fast we can go. We're at about 380, oh, is that 285? It's a little blurry on my screen. I'm watching through the preview window, my bad. But we're definitely going to be cruising. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 280, 290-ish now. And cruising up, that's what it looks like to me. It's just a little too blurry. But cruising up, let's crank up that throttle and get this thing moving. At about the 10K range, the atmosphere is kind of pretty thin. It's getting thin, and we can cruise pretty fast. We're up at the 530-ish meters per second and continuing to climb, getting close to the 600 mark here very shortly, and climbing just a bit more because we're going to try and get up to about the 15,000 meters range or altitude and see how that goes. Cruising up, we've definitely lost some speed pitching up the nose like that to climb, but we are very close to 600 now and turning it back as we continue to gain speed. And look at that, it's starting to get a little hot. It looks like those are turning red. That means we are burning and probably losing some durability. So we're going to cool it back on our throttle, cut those engines, and just let it cruise out. We have plenty of oxygen at this altitude for our jets, which is nice. We've got enough intakes that it shouldn't be a problem to run these things, or this ship at this high of an altitude. Now, the trick past this point, oh wow, I forgot we got up to about 20,000. So this is about as high as this plane can get us, is about the 20-kilometer altitude. That has enough air still coming into the intakes for the engines to breathe properly, and we can still fly with our wings, though it is pretty unstable, but we can get going fast. We're at a 730, looks like I can see there, give or take, and just climbing still. Now, we do have to watch our intake there up on the gauge in the top right, because that's what's going to determine if, when, and how our engines would flare out. Because we have two and not just a single jet engine there, if we do get a burnout, a flame out, most likely it'll only be in one engine, as the other engine may still have enough oxygen, and just one kind of flares out. And it could send us into a flat spin, which is definitely not something we want. It's a very hard thing to recover from. Do I see some red building up? I sure do. It looks like we're getting a little bit of heat there as well, but we are going to go ahead and cut back our engines a bit and kind of cruise down a bit more, or at least slow it down a bit so we're not burning up. But we're going to climb, it looks like, or no, we're just trying to hold it right there on the nav ball, right on the altitude, so we're not gaining too much and we're not losing too much altitude. We are going up though, and we're just trying to push that intake, trying to see how low we can get that. I think right about where it's going to flare out for these two engines is about 0.12 total is what you're going to see now. We're currently at 0.15, and it's going to go down, I betcha. 0.14. We got 0.02 more that we can probably get out of these engines, but we're going to go ahead and before that happens, just bring it on back down. We're cruising back and looping back around towards, we're going to bring it back for hopefully a landing back at the Space Center, or one of the two, probably back at the normal Space Center. I may try for the island depending on how we line up and how we're feeling. Depends on what our fuel is really looking like. That's going to be the big thing. What's up, guys? Look at this new internal. Pretty cool. Taking a peek out that window at that island we're passing, or at least we will be passing. It's not much developed. There isn't much of a place to land there. Otherwise, I think I might have taken a shot at it. Pretty fun to land out in uneven terrain, but it is what it is. I really don't want to break this thing. Why don't we go ahead and flip this thing over? Try to fly it upside down. It should be fine. It'll still generate the same amount of lift. Oh, we're getting pretty fast. We're going about 650-ish and slowing down meters per second here, upside down in our plane. The Shuttle Alpha Air is what I called it, just to make sure, because I built initially this in the vehicle assembly building for building onto a rocket, because I was going to launch it up into orbit, but I still needed to test it first. So I brought it back into the Spaceland hangar and kind of stripped it down from its rocket initial components and built it into a plane. But then after this, I'm going to go back once we know that this thing works and then readjust it off the new improved stable design. Of course, things will have to be moved a bit because it's Kerbal Space Program and nothing works perfect the first time, especially once you start modifying things. Coming on in, you can see the runway. We are getting ourselves lined up, just doing a nice little slow bank here, trying to line up well with our mission objective here on the runway. Coming in, you can see us trying to tilt, just make it a perfect lineup. It's not going to be perfect, it never is. I'll be always a little off. It's really hard to get a perfect lineup, but if you know what you're doing and you can watch your nav ball and know what to aim for, it's perfect. We're just lining up right here on the east-west line and slowing it down with our air brakes, bringing us down to about the 80, 75, 70, and landing this thing right now with a nice little touchdown. Brakes engaged already. We're going to release those drogue chutes off the back to help slow us down too. Makes it really easy to slow down very quickly with this thing. It's got great pickup and go from stopped. It can really get up to speed quickly and take off, and it can actually land really quickly too. It's nice. Let's shut down these engines, and we're just going to go ahead and recover this thing and call it good. So this is what we've got. We've got no science for the most part. We get to get pretty much all of our things back here, except for probably just a little bit of fuel. And our crew gained no experience, but let's go ahead and pop up to our orbital station and take a look at a lot of the things that we've had in place already that still have our crew up there. Due to some of the changes in the new update, we're going to have to be bringing some of these guys back sooner or later. The thing is the way that they gain experience is by going out and doing these missions, but they don't really get any of that experience returned to them, so they don't get newer levels, your crew that is, until that they're returned back from a mission and recovered back to your training facility, your space center. Jumping up to our MUN station here, taking a look at what we've got. Now we're checking out the mobile processing lab, because I figured out kind of how to use these. You can basically bring back like science, crew reports, EVA reports, moon rocks, whatever it is, whatever the case may be, to these mobile processing labs. They can hold up to 500 data. And what you do is you put a scientist or two in these mobile processing labs, and they'll chunk through that data that you've gathered and produce science, which can then be sent back fully, I believe, with an antenna back to your space center to provide you with science to spend. It's kind of a nice little system now that I understand it. It makes sense. Popping out to our surface base that also has a MUN lab here and a rover still. We lost the other ship that was here due to it having MechJeb on it and MechJeb not being updated, so it was totally destroyed. I've had to clean up a few things, but nothing too bad. Unfortunately, we have lost a few crew due to it. But it is what it is. That's kind of what happens when you get this. So you can see the science building up here after the data that we've got here. The data is slowly chugging down, and they're slowly working through that data to make that science that we can send back. I'm probably going to wait for a while, because even with 500 data, it's not a direct correlation to 500 science. I believe it's you get a little more science for all the data that you process, if you take the time to process it. So popping out here to check on our Minmus lab, and then taking a look down at our surface locations. Looks like we've got 2 down there, possibly one's just a flag, but we're going to take a look at this guy here, and see if we can bring this back up to the station and dock it. Now, it doesn't have much fuel, which is going to be a little scary, but we're going to try to get up to the station and dock it, and that'll be kind of one of the things that we're shooting for, to get these crew home. We've got crew on the Mun, but Minmus is actually quite easy to get home from due to the very low gravity. It doesn't take much fuel to get off and then back home to Kerbin. So lifting up, let's go ahead and put away all of the solar panels and extremities on this thing. Make sure we take a clean lift off. Get all those put away. We're going to need to raise the legs. Those are up, and let's raise up those ladders. Who's gonna need them up in space while we're flying, you know? Not us, that's for certain. Come on, raise the ladder. There we go. And the last one right there. Oh, right, we do have our antenna out. Let's go ahead and close that up. We don't need that breaking off right now. We may need that in the future. Retract. And there we go. Burning up. We're doing some correction burns maneuvers here to get in line with our rendezvous at the station. Look at our fuel. Oh my god, it's a little scary. At this point, we basically had to start using and planning our maneuvers with our monopropellant to use that to basically get within range of our station here. Thankfully, it worked. You can see us still using a little bit of our actual liquid fuel here, liquid and oxidizer fuel here, to burn our initial, what is that called? The correctional burn? I don't know what that's actually called. There's a name for it when you even out your speed between your object that you're trying to rendezvous with and your own speed so that you stay within range. And coming in for the dock off straight monopropellant, coming in nice and slow. We're going to get that in there, that's for sure. But this has been another episode of Kerbal Space Program. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Cheers.